Time for business. Kate Moody joins us. I am pleased to say here in the studio, starting with news that Facebook is facing a major lawsuit in the United States over its purchase of Instagram and WhatsApp. Tell us what we know, or WhatsApp me and tell me what we know.
I won't WhatsApp you, Mark. I'll tell you right here.
We can read about it on Instagram, perhaps. No. Please go ahead.
Not quite, Mark. Look, this is two major legal challenges that have been confirmed this evening. One is from the Federal Trade Commission, and the other is from a coalition of 46 U.S. states, plus the District of Columbia and Guam. The lawsuits allege that Facebook broke antitrust law and abused its dominant position in social media when it acquired those two services, Instagram for $1 billion in 2012 and WhatsApp for $19 billion in 2014. Essentially, the suits suggest that Facebook saw these two platforms as potential rivals, and so it bought them to consolidate its monopoly. Facebook is the world's biggest social network with 2.7 billion users around the world and a market value of nearly $800 billion. Both the FTC and the grouping of state attorneys general say they're seeking changes to what they describe as that anti-competitive behavior. It could result in requiring Facebook to divest from those two apps.
No company should have this much unchecked power over our personal information and our social interactions. And that's why we are taking action today and standing up for the millions of consumers and many small businesses that have been harmed by Facebook's illegal behavior.
Well, Facebook has described these lawsuits as revisionist history and noted that the FTC did in fact clear both those acquisitions at the time. Its shares did plunge as much as 4% on the NASDAQ before steadying closer to 2% down by the closing bell. Well, that news largely overshadowed the debut of DoorDash on the NASDAQ. Shares of the newly listed delivery service soared 85% on Wednesday, putting the startup's value at over $68 billion by the closing bell. That's double what analysts had expected. DoorDash is the third largest food delivery platform in the U.S., behind Grubhub and Uber Eats. Its popularity soared during the pandemic. Airbnb shares, meanwhile, will begin trading tomorrow. They're expected to reach some $42 billion in market value. Well, Wall Street closed lower, though we saw it dragged down in part by Facebook. Stocks had already turned back from their recent records as lawmakers in Washington continue to tussle over the next round of coronavirus relief funds. The Trump administration has presented its own proposal, but it's gained little traction so far, and time is running out. The Nasdaq closing down nearly 2% today. Earlier, we saw another mixed close for the major European indices. Investors are looking ahead to tomorrow's meeting of the European Central Bank, which is expected to boost emergency stimulus for the bloc. While Boris Johnson sits down with Ursula von der Leyen to try to break the deadlock over a trade deal between the UK and EU, the British government is already looking ahead to its post-Brexit trade ties with the United States. As of January 1st, the UK says it will suspend trade tariffs on American imports. The EU imposed those retaliatory tariffs last month as part of a long-running transatlantic trade dispute over illegal subsidies to plane makers Airbus and Boeing. The US had targeted European goods last year. The British government says it's hoping to de-escalate trade tensions with Washington once it's no longer bound by Brussels, but it's broadly seen as an effort to set the stage for a post-Brexit trade deal with the United States, which has so far proved elusive. Earlier, I spoke to Alison Stewart-Allen, Chief Executive of International Marketing Partners in London, about whether this announcement could ease the path towards a US-UK trade deal.
The UK post-Brexit is going to need all of the trading partners it can get. And this economy post-COVID is needing to focus on ways that it can support its domestic companies. The US is the biggest trading partner for the UK. And therefore, it's not a coincidence that the British Department for International Trade announced today, or at least supposedly announced today, that it would be suspending these tariffs. And it hopes certainly that it gets the attention of the Biden administration once it's in post after the 20th of January, in an effort to reinforce its historical trading relationship with the United States. But most importantly, it hopes that it can move up the agenda of the Biden administration, who will no doubt be preoccupied with the many domestic issues that will dominate the Biden administration at home for several months to come.
Mark, that's all the business news for now.
Yet another issue affected by Brexit. The whole knock-on effect is massive. It's a real sort of like domino puzzle, isn't it? It all falls down and goes off. We'll see what happens, of course. That discussion between Johnson and van der Leyen in Brussels continues and will continue, of course, even after they go home and call it a day and try to digest what they've been talking about. I'll stop the dinner puns. There we go. Kate, thank you for the business. Kate Moody there with all the business.